My friends, hello. I'll explain this very unusual sun to you in a moment. For now, I wanted to talk to you about the Rassemblement National, which some accuse of betraying its core values. So let me tell you about it. If you've been watching the Rassemblement National in recent years, you'll see that it's starting to align itself a bit with Macron's camp. They even went so far as to vote for the regulation banning social media for those under 15 years old. This forces all French people, whether they're over or under 15, to prove their identity, meaning they have to show an ID before accessing any social network. So that's it. It's clearly one of those freedom-restricting measures that would have been unthinkable 10 years ago, but today it goes through without any trouble. Considering that the National Rally was not long ago saying this was a freedom-restricting measure and all that. So if we look at these past few years, the National Rally has gone back on a lot of things, has gone back on Europe, has gone back on immigration, has gone back on a whole bunch of things. They either vote with Macron's camp or abstain to avoid opposing it. That's where things stand. So the question that many people are asking is, what is this party up to? Well, I'll tell you what they're up to. Here's what they're up to. If you look at Macron, it's really from an electoral standpoint. We're thinking cynically here. We're not talking about conviction. Here, I'm not talking to you about conviction. I'm not talking to you about principle. I'm not talking to you about ideology. I'm talking to you about pure electoralism. Pure electoralism, the one who was elected twice to the highest office in the country, is Emmanuel Macron. It's as simple as that. You can look at the problem however you want. He's hated, he's despised, whatever you want. Hated, he's the president of the republic. 4 years ago, when he finished his first term, he was just as hated as he is today. What did people do? They gave him their trust for a second term. So, in a way, no matter how much you say, yeah, Macron, I don't like him and all that, I agree with you, I don't like him either. I don't like Macron. I'm not here in front of you to defend him. But if I think about it cynically, if Macron could run for president a third time, if the constitution allowed it, come on, just between us. What would have happened really, without overthinking it or ego or anything else, he would have been elected a third time. You know it. So that's what the National Rally understood. They took note of that. He said to himself, the French, no matter if they hate Macron, no matter if they hate the Macron camp, the fact is, if I look at the votes cast, because be careful, it's not necessary for the majority of French people to support Macron for him to become president. That's not how it works. It's enough that the votes cast, that means the people who bother to get up in the morning to go vote, it's enough that those people in the majority vote for Macron and he wins. So in the end, you can just ignore the others. Because look, you take the French citizen who supports you or doesn't support you or whatever, or who is disappointed in you or whatever. But if in the end he doesn't vote, how much does he really matter? You see what I mean? He will. He won't influence you either way. So what the National Rally wants to do is get as close as possible to Macron's position. In other words, it wants to become another Macron. That's the strategy for them that allows them to say, well, if we get closer to Macron, we get closer to the possibility of being elected. You see what I mean? That's kind of the idea. So some will say they betrayed or whatever, but the reality is that, well, that's the way to get ahead in France. So what's going to happen? Is this a winning strategy or not? I'll give you another strategy, the strategy, for example, of the UPR, Asselineau's UPR. Or I can give you the strategy of Philippot, the Patriots. These are people who stand by their convictions. We are anti-EU, we want Frexit. How much influence does he have? How much influence does he really have? Honestly, just look at the numbers. I'm not making them up. How much influence does he have electorally? It's not an electorally viable position, even if in practice, if you do a street interview, most people find this position interesting. On a purely electoral level, that means if we're talking about people who actually vote, well, There are very few who support this position. You see what I mean? That's the reality. So if we look at the idea, for example, of the European Union, well, what happens is that, quite simply, despite all the Euroscepticism among the French, if you're being cynical, it's in your best interest to stay neutral on the EU or even be pro-EU despite everything. Because when it comes to the votes cast, that's what matters. Look, politics isn't a matter of conviction, it's purely a matter of strategy. It's like when you're playing cards. You play cards or you play a board game, I don't know, Monopoly. You're not going to play it with ideology. You're going to play it strategically. How much is this card worth? Well, there are cards that have value. The card, for example, Frexit, is a card that has a negative value. If you have that card, if you create a party today, no matter what your views on Europe are, we don't care about your views on Europe. As soon as you put Frexit in that party, you'll have a negative card. That's what we call the double six in a game of dominoes. It's a card that will weigh your game down, that will drag you down. If you put pro-European Union, well, now we're talking. Even though the majority of French people are anti-European Union, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Look at the results. The verdict at the ballot box isn't necessarily aligned with your feelings or the feelings of the people you meet on the street, at the pub, or in a restaurant. All right, that's not how it works. Every card has value, like the immigration card. The immigration card is a cursed card. If you take the immigration card, you're playing it neutral. Neutrality, or even that you're slightly complacent towards immigration. Well, people are going to say, yeah, we're fed up, there are too many migrants, all that stuff. Yes. But electorally, if you go against immigration, you're done for. You're done for. You see what I mean? So what does the Rassemblement National do? They just play those cards. When it comes to Europe, they stop being anti-EU because they don't want it to drag them down. Immigration, they ease up on immigration. Letting immigration slide is pointless. Because immigration, if you're anti-immigration, honestly, what does it get you? It gets you a whole bunch of people. We're in our own country, France for the French and all that, but they don't even vote, you know? They don't matter at all in the grand scheme. They carry absolutely no weight. So what's going to happen? You're just going to screw yourself over with them and ruin your party. That's all it is. It's not, if you want, the Rassemblement National. It's not a party of conviction. It's not a party of conviction. In fact, a party of conviction, well, you'd have to look really hard to find one. But that's it. They're just parties that do ideological positioning. Well, not really ideological, more like posturing. So they play cards. On every big issue, they play a card that's worth more than the others. Well, this one, no, it drags you down. This one, it lifts you up. Well, I'll take this one, and so on. That's all. It's just a supermarket, plain and simple. Let me tell you something. Once people come to power anyway, they just do whatever they want. Because there's no more, look, there's not, if I place an order, I'm looking at a catalog, I place an order for, I don't know, for a rug, for example. I order a green rug. There you go, a green rug for the living room. The color and the size are contractual. The material is contractual. If they don't deliver my rug, I can return it. I can demand a refund and all that. But in politics, the political program they show you is not contractual at all. There is no obligation for any party to stick to any of it. You can absolutely elect people based on a program, and the day they come to power, they throw it in the trash. In fact, it's made to be thrown in the trash. Programs and campaign promises are made to be thrown in the trash. It has no value, actually. So, what they do with it is afterwards they throw them away. Well, the elections are over, they just put on another face. So, that's it. But in my opinion, it's a strategy that just won't really work, simply put. Because the National Rally, no matter how much they act like Macron, so they act like Macron, you see, there's a logic to it, right? It's cynical, but there's a logic. But fundamentally, on the big day, the public will have real Macrons, real clones of Macron who don't carry any historical baggage. You see what I mean? They don't carry that history. Well, call it whatever you want. I know that the whole history of the National Rally and with it, you know, sometimes excesses and things like that. But fundamentally, their history will always come up again. They can say, look how compatible we are with the system. But on the big day, everyone will call to vote against them. So next year, how do you know who will be president? You wait for the second round, okay? You wait for the second round. Whoever faces the national rally will be the president. It's as simple as that, you know, as usual. It's a well-established tradition in the French system. Now, could they have played something else? Is there another card they could have played? No, I think the French system is pretty locked down. I don't see it. I don't see a card where I can tell you they had a better one to play. No, I wouldn't presume to tell you that. Although thinking about it a bit, maybe there are some approaches, but it's not simple. It's really not simple at all. There's no guarantee, you know, so the system is pretty closed off. I feel like the French like being lied to, honestly. You know, the French electorate, I'm not talking about people on the street. I'm talking about the voters. They like being lied to. They like it when you tell them anything, no matter how crazy. They love that. They've gotten so used to it that when a liar comes along, well, it's a speech that sounds like music to their ears. They've been lied to so much for 50 years that when they hear a speech that might actually have some truth in it, it throws them off, you know. That's it, but they really like the classics, you know. That's it, my friends. Speaking of that sun I was telling you about, it's huge. You can actually look at it because the clouds in front of it, they're not normal clouds. They're not clouds made of moisture. Here we are, you can barely see. We're on the coast. We're following the coast of Spain. We've left Valencia. The boat is following the coast at, I don't know, maybe about 30 or 40 kilometers offshore. And it's heading towards Barcelona. There are fires everywhere in this region. There are fires. And what do these fires do? Well, they release smoke that will pollute the clouds. And so it gives you clouds that actually act as a filter. And you can see the sun through it. By the way, earlier, when we were closer, it really stank. The sky, the air was very, very polluted. Very, very polluted. You could smell the smoke in Valencia this morning. Later, the wind shifted a bit. It cooled the air a bit. It cleaned the air a bit. But it still remained very polluted. There are quite a few fires going on. So, the problem is, you see, the French are the same. They have fires. Now, instead of buying 20 water bombers, they preferred to clean up the Seine for the Olympics. You know, the Seine, it cost what? 1.4 billion, something like that. You see what I mean? They could have bought water bombers with that. But hey, everyone has their own priorities. It's a country run by lunatics, run by corrupt people. The population applauds and votes for them. That's it. And if you don't see the solution, you don't really see a simple solution like that. Let me tell you something. Even if tomorrow they decided to go ahead and, for example, buy some water bombers, honestly, they're not just parked somewhere at an airport waiting to be delivered. These aren't Teslas, you know. You can't buy a water bomber today and have it delivered next Monday. It doesn't work like that. I think there's a waiting list. And if you pay now, you'll get it in 7 or 8 years. And even then, you know, even then. So instead, you'll have to outbid others, go to the second-hand market and try to buy some old junk, see if there are still any DC-10s, MD-11s or other planes you can convert. But that's not easy, you know? It's not easy at all. That's how it is. Anyway, my friends, thank you for listening to this video up to this point. Thank you for keeping me company during this journey across the Mediterranean. It's just a way to rediscover some countries. I was in Spain this morning. Valencia. I didn't have that same spark as I did in La Sainte-Semer or in Corsica. It just wasn't that same spark. I don't know. We'll see tomorrow. We'll see if Barcelona inspires something in me. I really go with my gut feeling. I can explain the mechanisms later, but I trust my gut feeling. That spark just wasn't there in Valencia. Well, it's true that you arrived on a day with a fire and all that, with the smoke and the polluted air and everything. Maybe that doesn't help, you know. Anyway, thank you, my friends, for watching this video up to this point. Just a reminder, you see, I'm a really bad marketer. Really, really. When it comes to marketing, I'm honestly the worst I know, seriously. I launched Circle Lucide. It's a coaching group. It's coaching that lasts 4 weeks. It's done in sessions. That's why it's sometimes closed for weeks. Then registration opens and closes again. So registration is now open. I'll put the link in the video description, circlelucide.com. It's a full 4 weeks of support. So on a lot of issues, we take a 360-degree approach, whether it's questions you have, life problems, all of that. I'm here to support you. Several of us are working on this, and we'd be happy to have you join us. Visit the Circle Lucid website at circlelucide.com for a questionnaire. And usually the questionnaire gives you a green result, meaning it's good. It can give you red, it can give you amber. It depends. That means if we realize we can't provide you with value, the form will probably be red. If the system detects that, based on the questions you bring us, we can't, it's not that we can't be there for you. We would like to, but we just can't provide value. You see? So we only take on cases where we feel we can really make a difference. All right? And generally we do make a difference. Thank you, my friends, for being here once again. And then the sun sets over the sea. And I'll see you in the next video. See you very soon. Very soon.